So you want to get into miniature painting, huh? Well, let's get to the table and figure that one out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got something different for you. What I'm going to do is take you to or through what a hobbyist goes through when first deciding I want to paint a miniature. Well, first off, you get a shiny new board game either at your local game store, delivered online, Kickstarter, whatever you're waiting for, and you open the box and you see a whole bunch of plastic miniatures, a whole bunch of them that you're like, I can't leave this color. I need to have them show up and do something or make it a little bit nicer than just this plain old plastic color here. So what do? Well, you got to look at what you need and where to go from here. So today, this video is going to show you exactly the steps I would have done or how I pretty much got started into miniature painting. So it's a little bit different. And this is going to be a series of episodes of how to. So first of all, we're going to start off with this video called How to Get Started in the Miniature Painting World. But first, we got to head over to our local game store. All right, so we're making our way over to Boutique FDB, which is, as you guys know, a sponsor of the channel. So we're going to go take a look, and we're going to show you guys a little bit of different stuff. Now, I mentioned a board game when I was sitting at my desk there, but I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can get miniatures in. There is your D&D miniatures from Nolzur's. Those are already pre-primed, and if you actually don't want to use a spray can or an airbrush to prime your miniatures, then a D&D miniature is actually the way to go. So as we make our way there, we can talk about other stuff too, like Warhammer miniatures. Yes, that is an expensive hobby as well as many other of the hobbies. If you want to get into miniature painting, there's often you can buy bulk miniatures on Amazon or through some Kickstarters, and you'll get maybe hundreds of miniatures for maybe $1 each, because sometimes they can go up to $15 a miniature. Even some miniatures in some games can go up to $60 for one miniature. So before you get into the miniature painting hobby, you want to make sure that you have the budget for it as well. And yeah, so let's just take a nice cruise over to the store, and once we get there, we'll take a look around the store a bit, and I'll show you the basic stuff you're going to need to buy as a first painter. All right, so we got here to the Boutique FDB. We're just going to walk inside and take a look around. Again, if you're at your own local game store, you never know what they might have. You can take a look around and see in there as well. All right, so sometimes when you walk in your local game store, you might be a little overwhelmed with like, wow, there is a lot of stuff going on, including miniatures, board games, D&D stuff, paint stuff. So you're going to want to look around, take a look. And depending on what you're into, you can have your wargaming styles, your tabletop skirmish games like Marvel Crisis Protocol, your Star Wars Shatterpoint. And you can also have, what I was talking about was the D&D miniatures. And like I was saying, these ones are already pre-primed. So you could take a look, and you have a whole range of these miniatures. I mean, the Boutique FDB has a whole wall full of these miniatures. And to be honest, if I were to start painting again today, I would probably start off in the miniatures that are more medium range, so that they have a little bit bigger area to paint with. So if you're making mistakes too, you can clean up easier, because if you're looking at a tiny little miniature like that, you've got a lot of work to do on it and a lot of areas. So it could be a little bit later for your skill and all that. And then there's, again, when you're coming around here and you're looking at your Warhammer stuff, so then you've got lots and lots of choice in Warhammer. And a lot of times the people will go towards the Space Marines because they're pretty much the simplest color scheme to paint. Blue. Pretty simple. You could actually just prime those with a blue primer and just do the details, and you'll be done. But again, that'll be for a later video. Now it's pretty much just where would you start? Like I said, the best place to start would be the D&D miniatures. Then you're going to get to your paints and your basing material. Let's talk about the paints. And we're going to look at primers. So you'll have your Citadel primers. You also have AK and Vallejo primers. You've got, I think Green Stuff World now has primers. You've got primers up to yin yang. But there are different kinds you can use. There's some that are like a specific blue color, or some that have like golden color. A really good one to start with as a primer is you're going to want to go either Wraithbone or White Scar. So a white color primer. Black is good too, but then you're going to have to put in a lot more work into painting your miniature. And then you have Army Painter that has a whole bunch of different colors. So if you're painting a red army, you could use some red primer, or you could just use some gray as well. So they have quite a bit of more choice in the color department. And this is something that you might want to look into, is what you want your base color. Again, in the Army Painter, I would go either a Brine Matter Beige or Matte White or Skeleton Bone as a starter, because there are certain paints that you could use directly on those primers and have exactly what you need to paint. And when you look at also painting, well, you're going to need a paintbrush. And there's often usually a big choice of paintbrushes as well. It depends on the type of brush you're looking for. Sometimes if you're looking for something that's a little bit more detailed, you're going to want something with a smaller tip on it. If you're looking to do dry brushing, you're going to want maybe a dry brush kind of brush that has like a edge tip like this so that you can dry brush. But that's a little bit more advanced dry brushing. I would suggest you stick with just a nice fine tip paintbrush, and there you go. Now, for paints, you're going to have your acrylic paints. Now, these are the Army Painter's current paints. They're coming out with the new War Paints Fanatic in 2024. But if you're just getting started, this is probably where you're going to want to start looking. Here, or in Citadel's paints. Now, like I said, in your local game store, you might have a whole bunch of different kinds. You might not even have Citadel or Army Painter. So always go with a color that you might think you want to work with, especially when you're looking at the packaging. And we'll go back, look at the D&D miniature again and see what the colors might be that you might want. So here, take a look at this guy here. This is like probably the easiest paint job you'll ever do. This guy is the Eidolon Possessed Sacred Statue. So okay, it's a statue. So you'd almost look at this. You could almost go with a Barbarian Flesh Primer and then just paint over with some wash and some other little highlights and stuff. And that guy would be painted. And that's where it comes in handy, sometimes just painting with the simple tools. Now, primer is your basic thing. If your miniature is not primed, you definitely want to prime it. However, there is also air paints. Okay, these are great, I find, for priming your miniature. You're going to have your matte black, your matte gray, your matte white, your varnishes, your mediums, and your cleaners for that. That is a whole other video about airbrushing. We'll get into that at some point, but it's always handy to take a look and see where you want to start. Now, what I really suggest for a beginner is the speed paints. Okay, you have a whole bunch here. You got a whole setup right here as well. You got everything you want. So if you're in the area of Boutique FDB, come on down, take a look. They got tons of speed paints. They even have the speed paint medium in the huge bottles, so you can thin them down even more. And this is just one coat and you're done. Okay, so you put on your paint, you're done with it. It does your shading, it does everything you want. And you come over to Citadel, they have the same kind of thing here. They've got what they call contrast paints. I'm not going to get into the whole price wars thing, but okay, but you're going to get a better bang for your buck with Army Painter. But the Citadel stuff, what happens with contrast paints is that they're a little bit more consistent with their work of how light and dark works. But as we go down, you have your base coats, you're going to have your layer coats, and you're going to have your highlighting coats and stuff, which is kind of interesting when you're into this kind of painting. And Army Painter's coming out with the super triad of colors, which is 6 colors and all that. But they have them as well in the air paints range, where you'll pick 3 colors, and that's how you're going to work on your layering and stuff. Now, what's the other next thing you need? You got your paintbrush, you got your primer, and you got your basic colors. Well, you're also going to need a dry palette, or a wet palette, I should say. But you can also going to probably need some other tools eventually. But these are, like, you can take a look. There's some brushes here. There's like a whole kit of brushes you can get. There's some AK interactive brushes. You can get all sorts of stuff like that. Then when you're really ready and you want to work on the bases of your miniature, again, that's going to be a whole other tutorial, a whole other video, how-to video to just do bases. You've got a whole choice of stuff you can use from all sorts of companies to use on your bases. I mean, you got everything from grass tufts, you got snow, you've got effects, you've got mud and dirt and anything you can think of. You even have stuff that's already laser cut flowers and that. So yes, it sounds like it's a bit overwhelming, but another thing you're also going to need also, I just thought of that, is your water pot. Okay, yes, you can use your own typical mug at home and you can have fun with that, but you know, that's just a fun little gimmick, and it's, you know, it's got little cracks in it. Just rinse your brush on and all that. It's like cups at home, it'll work. But I will suggest, I'll show you some more tools that I have at home of stuff that you might require when painting a miniature. So for now, we're gonna pick up a few things while I'm here, and we're gonna head back home, and I'm gonna show you a couple other tools that come in handy. All right, so we're back home now, and we're going to take a look at the stuff that, some of the things that I actually have that are a little bit extra or different than what they have in some stores that you can pick up anywhere else. As you can see, I have a wet palette in front of me here. The wet palette wasn't at Boutique FDB, but you can order them. You can also get them anywhere online as well if you're not in Canada, if you're not in the area. Pretty simple. It's also a paintbrush holder. You can carry it with you, so you can bring your paints with you. And as you can see, it's kind of a mess right now, but usually this is where you keep your paints, and it keeps them wet for, I'd say, at least a day. It can keep them wet, and at least that way, if you want to reuse that color or whatever, or if you made a nice blend, you can use it again. So that's always a handy tool to have. It's a great little tool. I'll just put this aside for now. The other thing I would suggest having is what they call a dry palette. Now, I know mine is really messy. But this one actually came with something, I can't remember what. I think it might have been actually the first original speed paints. Anyway, so in here I would use normally the speed paints, because speed paints can dry up and then they just peel right off after when you want to clean this thing. So like as you can see here, it peels right off and you can clean that. Another thing I actually use for speed paints is a dollar store ice cube tray. And why? Because look, the bottom is silicone. And you just pull on it and they pop, like usually they pop right off, but like this one's being a little finicky today, but the paint just like comes right out and you can just reuse this over and over. So at least you're not wasting either like little tubs or anything like that. Always handy to have that. Another thing you can see here, you guys are actually getting a preview of some miniatures I'll be painting up soon on the channel, but is a paint holder, or a miniature holder, sorry. These are the Citadel ones. These are the newer ones that have a nicer little handle. You can actually see that it holds really well. The other ones were a little bit thicker on the bottom, a little bit harder to hold, a little bit more. If you have a bigger hand, it's fine. I actually 3D printed this part right here myself, because I have a 3D printer. And if you have access to one, you can get these printed for like nothing. The only problem is I don't know where I put mine. I might have accidentally thrown it out by accident. But you can print this out, and it's just this part here. So you have to use a little bit of sticky tack to get them to stick on. But it's possible, and it works, you know. Other people I've seen use, and I've actually used it, is this old glue can I used to have. I stuck some sticky tack on top. I use this often for my airbrush when I'm priming and that. So this way your hand doesn't get full of paint. You can wear a glove as well. Latex gloves, by the way, is another must-have, but not for regular miniature painting, just for airbrushing, I find. And as you saw when I talked about the water pot, well, I actually have one, but I only, again, use this for when I'm cleaning out my airbrush. I only use that to get the paint out of my airbrush and clean it up and all that. I don't actually use it. What I do use is this nifty little tool here, and I'm going to try not to make a mess with it, because it is a lot of water. Oh, I'm making a mess already, probably. Here you go. All right. This tool is fun. And along with that tool, you're going to want to have some paper towels. You can see I've used it to wipe the rims off of some miniatures. Paper towels also very handy, because you want to keep your brush nice and clean. And the reason why I like this thing more than a water pot is that whenever you put your brush in it, you just flush it down and you get a whole pack of new clean water. I mean, even if it's just dirty here, but your water's clean. And you just wipe off your brush on a paper towel. All right. And I just find this is very useful, because you're getting fresh water in every time. You're not dipping your brush back into a pot full of old paint. It's just a nice little tool. It's not expensive. Green Stuff World actually made one, and they're charging like 2 times or 3 times the price as an Amazon one. Got this on Amazon. I don't remember how much. It was quite cheap. I just searched for a paintbrush cleaner or whatever, and this popped up, and I find it amazing. One other little tool that I would suggest if you want as a starter, because nowadays, sure, I have to be careful with the water there. Nowadays, the companies usually come with, well, some, I don't know, Army Painter is the only thing I pretty much paint with now, but they come with little mixing balls inside. You can see it's written there, mixing balls included. They didn't used to. So you actually had to buy your own mixing balls. And I have some here. I bought some. They're in a little storage here. I have some just in case my older paints don't actually have the mixing balls in them. So I've included that in there. Now, the mixing balls are handy because then you can, actually, I don't know if you can actually maybe see them. There you are. They're literally, I don't know if you can see them on camera, but they're literally right in there. You can see them. Another thing to have, this is a nail polish shaker, okay? Nail polish, little bottles of nail polish. You just slap your paint bottle right in there, tie it up. I won't turn it on because it's very noisy. And it shakes it for you. So, because sometimes you'll get pigments that stay in the bottom here, like this one here, especially the silver metallics, I find are the worst ones. The bronze, you can see, like, look, the difference in the color here. You can see the pigments are staying there, and look at the top, it's very light. So as you shake this up, well, I mean, it's hard on the wrist, number one, but you just pop it in there and it gives it a good shaker. Again, I was talking about different size brushes in that. You can have brushes. This one, the bristles are getting a little used lately. I don't know what happened. It used to be fine, but usually a little bit of water and they go right back pretty much to normal. This is pretty much a medium-sized brush. This is an Army Painter, I believe, base coating brush. You can see it's almost the same size. Again, the bristles are starting to go. My brushes are starting to get a little old. These ones, this one is nuts. The Psycho. It is the tiniest little tip. To really get those tiny details, especially like eyes and stuff on a miniature. And as you can see in the background, I have the Army Painter's paint rack holder thing where you can also paint on. It's got that. I also got this Army Painter cutting board that I use pretty much to paint on to make a mess on, as you can see, because your desk will get dirty. I even have another cutting mat underneath that, the whole thing, just because it's messy. But my table still gets messy and all that. So anyways, so those are pretty much the tools that you're going to need. So let's just go now and do a final checkout of everything and have my final thoughts on miniature painting. Okay, so that is the basic of miniature painting. Are you ready for it? Or do you have a million board games that you want to get painted and make them look a lot better on your table than they are right now? I mean, it is a great hobby. It is a great stress reliever. It is an expensive hobby, so take your time. Don't go buying a whole complete paint set, especially if you've never painted before. Start with a few paints. Like my suggestion says, start with a white primer, any kind of that, and work from there. Speed paints are a really good way to start your painting because they do everything in one coat. But if you're getting a smaller miniature, you're gonna have a lot of details, and sometimes speed paint can go over onto an area you don't want to paint with. So you have to make sure you have some extra matte white or a white paint on the side just to be able to touch up your mistakes. If you're using just acrylic paints, don't forget to put a wash on. You can also do highlights, but that becomes a little bit more of a tedious step. I would suggest you start with a nice paint and a nice wash. Either a dark wash or a brown wash or even a color wash. So if you're painting purple, get yourself a purple tone wash. You're painting red, get a red wash. And go along with that. There's so many washes out there, so many paints out there. If you want to, you could actually get like a couple Vallejo, a couple AK Interactive paints, a couple Army Painter, and a couple Citadel paints, and see which one works best for you, which one covers better, which one has a better, just in general, which one has better pigmentation, and so on. So anyways, those are what I think are what you need to do as a miniature painter starter. I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you enjoy. If you're new to the channel, and I hope you're liking these videos, hit that subscribe button. Consider subscribing because it's free. It doesn't cost anything. And hit that notification bell, and many more videos will be coming their way. This is the first of a how-to series. I'm hoping to go into more depth of how to paint a miniature in general, how to airbrush, how to 3D print eventually with a 3D printer, or how to do stuff like that. That might come in. I'm not sure yet because it depends. 3D printers, there's so much out there. But to have my take on how to paint a miniature in general, I think that would be a little bit of fun. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you at the table in the next one.